Radio Migrante every Sunday night from 9 to 10 p.m. on CHRY 105.5 FM.
At magandang gabi po sa lahat po na nakikinig sa atin dito lamang sa Radio Migrante sa CHRY 105.5 FM, your leading source for diversity. At maaari nyo rin kaming pakinggan sa www.rdo.co/CHRY, Bell 5 973, Rogers Digital Cable 945 o sa tunein.com. So ang inyo pong mga tagapaglingkod ngayong gabi ay si Rhea Gamana at Ish Cabanya. Hello Ish!
Hello. Yeah,
isa lang yung mic natin.
We're trying to swivel the mic here.
So okay lang. So magandang gabi. Kamusta Ish?
Mabuti. Yeah, hello to all our listeners all around the world. We just got a recent report that we have about 32,000 listeners for all the shows in CHRY. So,
nice.
Congratulations, CHRY.
Exactly. Congratulations, CHRY. So, ngayong gabi dito lamang sa Radyo Migrante ay pag-uusapan natin yung health awareness, no? I think it's very important na maano din to. I think it's the first time dito sa Radyo Migrante na mapag-usapan yung health awareness. This will be issue ng TB, yung stigma. Ano nga ba talagang TB at paano siya naging stigma at paano ma-educate yung mga nakikinig sa atin na mga kababayan nating Pilipino. Kasama natin ngayong gabi ay si Genevieve Canizares, live in studios. She's a Toronto Public Health Nurse sa TB Prevention and Control Program sa Toronto Public Health. So bumati ka muna, Genevieve.
Hi, thank you. I've told you this before. I apologize in advance.
That's okay. No problem.
I don't speak Tagalog, but you can ask me questions and I will give you a response in English.
Shout out sa pamilya mo, sa mga nakikinig sa iyo.
Yeah, so hi to my brothers and my mom and dad and to Raja.
I'll just shout out as well because we had a recent meeting at Ward 9. Shout outs to all the people there, the Filipino Neighborhood Association at Townsview.
Tsaka sa lahat na nakikinig sa atin dito lamang sa Radio Migrante sa CHRY 105.5 FM. So bago tayo pumunta sa ating interview ay unahan mo muna Ish ng news and information.
Okay, so for our first news, 6,000 mourners bury fair trade exec Kapalya. From Iloilo City, Philippines, at least 6,000 mourners braved heavy rains on Sunday as they laid to rest Romeo Kapalya, head of a fair trade center on Panay Island, who was gunned down on March 15th. Unidentified men gunned down Kapalya in front of the public market of Oton town in Iloilo province on March 15 as he was assisting his 90-year-old mother-in-law board his sport utility vehicle. He died of the bullet wounds in the head before reaching Western Visayas Medical Center in Iloilo City. Kapalya, who is 65, younger brother of Davao Archbishop Emeritus Fernando Kapalya, was a chair of the board of directors of PFTC and the center's general manager for more than 12 years. PFTC helps produce and sell natural and organic products for local and international markets. It buys organic muscovado sugar and bananas at prices higher than the mainstream market from farmers, exports these to fair trade organizations in Europe and Asia. In his homily, Archbishop Kapalya called for justice and condemned the killing of his brother. In quotes, "We strongly condemn this heinous and unconscionable crime. We demand justice for my unarmed brother Romy and for many other victims like him. We condemn this barbarous act before his disabled mother-in-law." But Kapalya's colleagues and human rights groups have blamed alleged death squads operated by the military for the killing, citing the consistent tagging of Kapalya as a leader of the rebel New People's Army. Military officials have dismissed the allegations as baseless and have offered to help in the investigation. Bayan Muna representatives Nery Colmenares and Carlos Zarate have filed a resolution asking the House Committee on Human Rights to investigate the killing of Kapalya, who is also a founding member in Panay of Samahan ng mga ex-detainee laban sa detention at aresto or selda.
Ang pangalawang news po natin ay nagmula po sa bulatlat.com. Migrant groups Migrante International and United Filipinos in Hong Kong filed a petition before the Supreme Court asking for a temporary restraining order on the 160 or 160% PhilHealth rate hike being imposed on overseas Filipino workers. According to Migrante Sectoral Party List Chairperson Connie Bragas Regalado, we are angered by this most recent imposition, especially in the light of the continuous spate of price hikes and state exactions on OFWs and on the Filipino people. This is another form of kotong or extortion being imposed on OFWs without proper consultation with the sector and other stakeholders. Last March 14, 2014, a picket was held simultaneously with the filing of the petition. Former overseas Filipino workers and their families who joined the protest called the PhilHealth rate hike as PhilDeft, your partner in death, mocking its original title, Your Partner in Health. PhilHealth originally intended to hike its premier rates to 2,400 pesos back in 2012 through Circular Number 007 Series of 2012. This, however, was met with protests, forcing PhilHealth to defer its implementation and eventually reduce the increased rates to 1,200 pesos instead. And I think this is a good segue, no, dun sa pag-uusapan natin tungkol sa education on health of the immigrants, focusing on TB. So makakasama po natin ngayong gabi ay si Genevieve Canizares na nagmumula po sa Toronto Public Health. Isa po siyang nurse at siya ay nasa TB Prevention and Control Program. At mabanggit ko lang po, ngayon po, actually this month, it's still Women's Month po dito sa Radyo Migrante. At ngayong araw sa Pilipinas ay World TB Day. At saka siguro maliit na primer lang bago natin na ibigay yung mikropono kay Genevieve ay noong 1993 pala ang World Health Organization dineklara ang tuberculosis, so ang TB, na sa global emergency. At saka mahalagang talakayin ito mamaya ni Genevieve. Kaya welcome studio, Genevieve Canizares. Magandang gabi sa iyo.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, at saka maraming salamat din sa pagpapaunlak mo sa amin dito sa Radyo Migrante. Thank you very much. So siguro simulan natin yung ano nga ba talaga ang TB?
Okay, so again, I apologize. My response will be in English.
That is okay.
So TB, I mean, when people hear TB in Canada, sometimes they're surprised. They say things like, wow, it still exists. I thought it was eradicated. Doesn't exist anymore. But it still is around today, and it's been around for centuries, and it still remains to be a big global health concern. 1/3 of the world is actually infected with the TB bacteria, and it used to be known as the consumption disease because its nature of consuming people, and it's been around for so long that it was actually, the TB bacteria has been found in mummies. So this speaks to how long the disease has been around. And I guess what most people don't know is that there are two types of TB, TB infection and TB disease. So with TB infection, this means that an individual has been infected with the TB germ. However, they're not infectious to other people and they cannot spread TB. I'd like to call this TB the sleeping TB. So it's dormant in your body. And at some point, they were infected with the germ, but their immune system was able to sort of wall off the bacteria. So what it tells us is that anyone who has TB infection, they've been exposed to the germ, and they would have a positive TB skin test. And anyone who has a positive skin test, usually the next step is to have a chest x-ray done. And someone with TB infection would not have any symptoms of TB, and they would have a normal chest x-ray. 90% of people who have TB infection actually don't go on to develop active TB disease. And so I guess this leads me to speak about that difference between TB infection and TB disease. And so when someone has TB disease, it means, yes, they've been exposed to the bacteria, but now it is awake in their body and it's multiplying. And if they have it in their lungs, they're able to spread it to other people. Some of the common signs and symptoms of TB would include a productive cough or unproductive cough lasting longer than 2 weeks, fever, chills, night sweats, feeling tired, unexplained weight loss of appetite, and they would have an abnormal chest x-ray. But interestingly enough, TB, it's thought to be found, well, it is found majority of the time in the lungs, but it can be found in other parts of the body, such as the brain, lymph nodes, the bones, so sort of wherever the bacteria decides to stay. And if it's in the lungs, that's when you're able to spread it to other people.
I see. Binabasa ko yung PowerPoint presentation mo,
Sure.
through Toronto Public Health.
Yeah.
The knee was mentioned too. TB could actually be located sa knee din pala, sa tuhod. So how does that happen? That's actually very interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, it was interesting to me too as I started as a new nurse in TB. I had no idea that my thought of TB was that it was always in the lungs. But yeah, 30% of the time, the bacteria can be found, for example, in other parts of the body, such as the bone, and sort of it travels through the bloodstream and it sort of stays where it kind of wants to. But most of the time, it is in the lungs. But yes, it can be sort of anywhere in the body.
How does someone get contracted by TB? Paano ba nahawa yung isang tao?
TB is only spread through the air when someone coughs or sneezes, and that person has to have TB in their lungs for them to spread it. So, for example, if I had TB of the bones, like you had identified earlier, you can't spread that kind of TB to other people. It has to be in the lungs, and I would be able to spread it to you, for example, if I coughed or sneezed, and it's only through the air. I think there's some misconceptions as to how it's spread. I've had some clients who thought they couldn't share cutlery with the person who had TB or couldn't use the same bathroom, etc. But you can't get TB that way. It's spread through the air, and so through the same airspace that you share with someone. Yeah.
So you talked about it's just through the air, right?
Yeah, so because it's only airborne, so if it was, let's say, you would contract TB through contact, like through physical contact, then yes, you would be able to get TB that way. So if we shared a fork or spoon or plate together, then I would be able to spread it. But because it's only through the air, that's why you're unable to get TB through sharing cutlery, for example.
I see.
I guess looking at the big things, in 2009, there were 1,600 TB cases in Canada, 568 here in Ontario, and 255 particularly here in this city, Toronto. Is this still the case? And what's the average rate of people affected with that disease?
Yeah, so that was 2009, you had said, right? So, actually the rates of TB have sort of been stable throughout the years. We're still seeing about 1,600 cases in Canada and about 500 in Ontario. And at least half of those cases in Ontario are found in Toronto. And a big reason for this is because of immigration patterns, right? Toronto is sort of a high immigrant city, and that's why we see at least 50% of the Ontario cases here in Toronto.
Siguro balikan ko lang kasi yung BCG vaccine, because you asked me kanina kung nakakuha ko ng bata pa ako, pero nakukuha mo yung TB through the vaccine. Can you explain that to our listeners? Right?
Sure. So yeah, that is a common misconception. A lot of people believe that if they've had the BCG vaccine, in which, just so for our listeners, so they know, is that we don't give it in Canada. There are a number of reasons for that. One is that we don't have high rates of TB in Canada, let's say compared to other countries such as the Philippines. And they give it in countries like the Philippines to prevent severe forms of TB in children, so TB meningitis. So the common misconception between the BCG vaccine is that a lot of people who have a positive skin test, TB skin test, believe that it's positive because they've had the BCG vaccine. Well, it is true in certain circumstances. I mean, if you're 10 years old or younger and you have a positive skin test, there is a chance that that positive skin test may be as a result of the BCG vaccine. But generally, after 10 years, the effectiveness of the BCG vaccine sort of wanes over time. So I kind of like to use the example of, perfume, for example. You spray it first thing in the morning, leaving your house, smell great, and sort of as the day goes by, you're not really smelling the perfume as much. So that's sort of just to give you an idea of what the BCG vaccine is like. So there's also controversial research about sort of its effectiveness. So we don't, just for our listeners, we don't give it in Canada, but it's still given in many parts of the world where there are high rates of TB.
You mentioned about different parts of the world. Let's talk about the Philippines. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned a specific number. What is the average rate of Filipinos affected or dying with TB?
Sure. So it's very rare, just to sort of give you a broad picture, it's very rare that in Canada someone dies of TB. Because we're very lucky here to have good access to treatment. We have excellent TB prevention and control programs. But, sort of in developing countries such as the Philippines, there is, challenges and limited access to treatment and diagnostics. So in the Philippines, the World Health Organization reports that they are part of the top 22 high burden countries of TB, and there are approximately 75 Filipinos that die of TB every day, and it is the sixth leading cause of death in the Philippines. I actually found that really, really interesting.
Let's go to yung concern, yung pag-aalala, kasi may stigma. Like there are certain groups na mas mataas yung risk ng developing tuberculosis sa Filipino community, such as yung mga immigrants, yung mga migrants, at saka yung mga live-in caregivers. Siguro pwedeng makapagbigay ka ng insights o ng explanation sa mga kababayan nakikinig sa atin ngayon. Why there are, the ones who are higher risk of developing tuberculosis.
Sure. Okay. So, immigrants and Filipino live-in caregivers are at a higher risk of developing TB for a number of reasons. First reason being that, they are born and they come from a country where there are high rates of TB, as I mentioned, the Philippines. Two, immigrating to a new country can be very stressful. And so what happens is that it causes your immune system to sort of weaken. And so people who may have TB infection or sleeping TB may develop TB disease as a result of a decrease in their immune system. And people who immigrate to Canada actually have their highest risk of developing TB is within the first 2 years of arrival. And also, it could be within the first 5 years of arrival, but most particularly those first 2 years of arriving. And I think, in terms of live-in caregivers, the nature and work of any caregiver role in general. So not just live-in caregivers, but, nurses or caring for a family member with chronic or mental health conditions can be very stressful. And so this can also lead to a lot of stress, a lot of burnout, and can also cause the immune system to weaken. And so that's why people who are immigrants or live-in caregivers are at a higher risk of developing TB.
So, is that quote-unquote normal na nagbabago yung immune system?
I think it depends. I think everyone's very different and individual, and everyone's health is different. So it really depends on, someone who's perfectly healthy, has TB infection, their chance of developing TB disease is much lower than someone who, let's say, has cancer or any other immunocompromised condition. Or someone who has HIV, they're at a higher risk of developing TB disease than someone who's perfectly healthy. But again, I think that whole process of immigration and the stress that's associated with that does relate to the risk of developing TB disease.
Maybe we can even unpack it further with, you mentioned earlier about the stress with deprofessionalization or people getting different jobs from what they used to do back in their home country, such as in the Philippines. And can you comment on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak to it from a personal point of view because I was born in Canada. But from my conversations with people who have immigrated here, it's not an easy process. Or, you know, I think of my parents and, you know, how much, you know, they've done and what they've had to do. And there are reasons for immigrating to a new country, right, to sort of better the life of their children. And, you know, when I think of what that would potentially look like if I had to go through something like that, I mean, I can only imagine the stress and the hardships that would be associated with that experience. Yeah, I can't speak to it from a personal experience, but I can only imagine what that's like.
So let's talk about the stigma dahil ito yung talagang mabigat in terms of when you hear someone who's a TB, parang it changes your life, kumbaga, no? Say for example, may isang tao na say nandito na, tapos may TB. In a worldwide perspective, may stigma na pwede siyang ma-deport. Is this true or not? Please explain kasi napaka-importanteng malaman natin.
For sure. And I'm glad you brought this up because I think this is a very important piece and it's very important information for people to know who have immigrated to Canada. So part of the immigration process is that it entails or it involves doing a medical exam, which I'm sure both of you have experienced, right? Coming to Canada. And part of that medical exam involved having a chest x-ray. So the reason why that process is in place is to make sure that anyone who has active tuberculosis does not enter Canada. Of course, because we don't want to pose a public health risk to other people. And so they are required to do a chest x-ray in their home countries. In terms of being deported, a common question that kind of relates to your question and what I get asked a lot is, you know, I did my medical exam in the Philippines and now you're telling me I have TB. How is this possible? And so, again, going back to sort of the two types of TB, you know, we don't know. I'm sure there are many people here who immigrate to Canada who have TB infection, but over time or with stress, their immune systems may go down, causing the bacteria to wake up, and now they have TB disease. My experience with people who have, you know, recently immigrated and have TB, or clients who are live-in caregivers, one of their fears is that they would be deported because they have TB. And a lot of these individuals, too, may not have OHIP, right? Because there is a 3-month waiting period to get OHIP while you're in Canada. So there is, I think, some fear and stigma associated with that. And so just for our listeners to know that if you have TB, it has no effect on your immigration status, that you won't be deported. And even if you don't have OHIP, there is a program funded by the provincial government that will pay and fund for medical assessments such as chest x-ray, sputum testing, TB skin testing. We're very lucky here to have that sort of support in place here in Canada. There is really no effect on immigration status, and individuals who have TB won't be deported. Or it won't affect, for example, I've had clients too who've asked me, oh, but I'm applying for my permanent residency. So is this going to have an effect on that? And it has no relation.
Confidential ba kapag lumapit sa'yo yung tao na may TB?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very important point. So everything is confidential. You know, even if someone wanted to call Toronto Public Health and consult and, you know, had some questions about themselves or a family member, etc., it is confidential. between the client and us.
Tonight, we're still talking about TB awareness, and we still have Genevieve Canizares of Toronto Public Health. So we've been talking about the implications of migration and how many people are affected worldwide, and particularly here in Canada and in the Philippines. So if we want to know if we have TB, what's the procedure like, and which institutions could we go?
Sure. So I guess the first step would be getting a TB skin test. And usually people don't get this done unless one, they're volunteering somewhere, or their employer requires it, or it's also a requirement for school, or that Toronto Public Health has contacted them, that they've been identified as a contact of someone with active TB. So the first step is to do a TB skin test, and that would sort of tell us if someone's been exposed to the TB bacteria. So if it's negative, then they were not a person, we would consider that person not exposed to the bacteria. If it's positive, then the next step is to do a chest x-ray. And if it's negative, then that means they have TB infection. And if there's some abnormalities in the chest x-ray, then we would question, or we would assess further and collect sputum. We'd also, of course, do a medical history. So ask the client or individual, have they been exposed to someone with TB? Maybe grandma or brother or sister has been sick. We also would do sign and symptom assessments. So again, those symptoms of, have you had a cough, fever, chills, night sweats, etc., and sort of go from there. And so how we know someone has TB for sure is if their sputum has grown TB. So there are several tests that are involved in that. And the first being is that we send off the sample to the lab. They'll look under the microscope and see, are we seeing any bacteria? And then the second step is to see if it actually grows TB, and that could take up to 7 to 8 weeks to grow on culture. And so that is how we diagnose someone with TB.
So, kung kailangan pa naman nakikinig sa atin nung maraming impormasyon, to add more information, how do they contact you or the Toronto Public Health for that matter?
Sure. So I guess one thing I wanted to mention earlier is that an important piece about TB is that it is preventable, treatable, and curable. Anyone with TB infection or sleeping TB can take medications to prevent TB disease, and this reduces your rate of developing TB disease significantly. And anyone who has TB disease must complete treatment to cure the disease. Another good thing is that all the medications are free through Toronto Public Health. And so if anyone has any questions, they can always contact the TB program at Toronto Public Health. Any questions or concerns at 416-338-7600. We also just revamped our website. So it's www.toronto.ca/health/TB_prevention. And myself and a colleague of mine, we actually, part of our role is going out into the community, doing outreach and education and prevention. So you can always call us to come out to your community and do a presentation, or if you need resources about TB, we're happy to send them your way.
At saka libre siya, di ba?
Yeah. So everything's free.
Okay. So yung community work mo, paano nagsimula to?
So the TB program at Toronto Public Health does have a team. Well, we're a team of 2 that our role really is to educate the public and conduct outreach, education, and consultation in the community, and to collaborate with groups that are at a higher risk of developing TB disease, such as the Filipino community. So that's sort of how I've started my role in outreach and education in TB. And because a lot of our clients are from the Philippines. Part of my assignment was to sort of connect with the community and educate people about TB awareness.
Since malapit na din tayo magtapos, any message sa mga kababayan natin nakikinig ngayon?
Sure. So I guess I think the important thing is, some things to keep in mind about TB is if you have a cough, cover your cough and encourage others to do the same. Be aware of your environment. Get good ventilation is important. Open doors and windows. I know that's sort of hard to do in the cold winters, but if you can open your window even a little bit, I think it helps. Be aware of the signs and symptoms of TB now that you know what they are. Mm-hmm. And if you do experience any of those signs and symptoms, seek medical assistance. And know your TB skin test results. I know it's not mandatory, but if you happen to get one done for volunteering or employment purposes or school purposes, just keep in mind and keep that document handy. If you have a positive skin test, ask your doctor about taking preventative TB medication to reduce your chance of getting sick with TB disease in the future. Mm-hmm. I know we live in a crazy, fast-paced society, but make healthy lifestyle choices to keep your immune system strong. So, those things we hear all the time: eat healthy, exercise, rest. Also, people who smoke, they're also more likely to get infected with TB. So it's another reason to quit smoking. Again, also that it doesn't affect your immigration status and you cannot get deported if you have TB infection or TB disease. And if you don't have OHIP, that's okay too. There is a program that will be able to support you. And again, if I work closely with the Filipino community, and I'm happy to come out and connect with anyone who feels that TB awareness would be helpful within their community as well.
Mm-hmm. Quick question, Genevieve.
Sure.
Let's say, for example, on my own liberty, gusto kong pumunta sa doktor at just to know kung may TB ako hindi. Pwede ba yun?
Sure. I mean, you can, if you go see your family doctor, you could definitely, have a conversation and engage in a conversation about TB. And you can have them do a TB skin test for you if you'd like. The thing about the TB skin test, I have to mention too, is that it's not necessarily free.
Okay.
So I think that's important for purposes like school, volunteering. Mm-hmm. But it is free if you've been identified as a contact by Toronto Public Health, or you are part of the homeless or underhoused population. But sure, if you wanted to have that conversation with your physician and see what you're curious about your TB skin test, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay, maraming salamat, Genevieve Canizares from Toronto Public Health, from TB Prevention and Control Program. Maraming salamat, Genevieve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very much welcome.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting conversation tonight. Madaming natutunan.
Marami akong natutunan for sure.
Yeah. From the breadth of how many people are affected to the particularities of what we can do. I guess one important thing that Genevieve mentioned tonight is kailangan ng collective voice on the awareness of this and what we can do as a community, as immigrants here in Toronto in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. So yung contact information na binanggit ni Genevieve ay ilalagay po natin yan sa Facebook event page.
I think it was posted already.
Oh.
Yeah. We're live.
He's being proactive. Okay.
Multitasking.
So, bago tayo magtapos, ay meron po tayong mga announcements. So, first, actually, may dalawa tayong announcement na ipi-play natin on air. So,
Alberta is home for over 100,000 Filipinos.
The Filipino community continues to grow through the Canadian government's Temporary Foreign Workers Program.
Despite the sheer number of Filipinos in the province, services from the Philippine consulates are poor and inadequate.
We need a permanent consular office in Alberta to serve our growing community.
Join our campaign to have a consular office in Alberta. For more information, email us at migrantealberta@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at Alberta Consul.
Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. Ako po si Esther Lisa Draman. Volunteer po sa Caregiver Action Center. Nakabase po dito sa Toronto. Iniimbitahan po kayong lahat na umattend sa naka-schedule na tax clinic. Ito po ay libre para sa mga workers, dayuhan dito sa Toronto, nagtatrabaho na nag-earn ng below 30,000 a year para po matulungan sila na makompute ang kanilang income tax return. So, libre po ito. Ito po ay magaganap sa St. Pascal Virulent Catholic Church, 92 Steeles Avenue West, sa March 29 from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. At meron pong karagdagan na activity. Ito po ay free legal clinic. Isa rin pong libreng serbisyo para sa mga nangangailangan ng advice from our lawyers from Parkdale Community Legal Services and Vecina Law Office, as well as Carranza Barristers and Solicitors. So ito po ay inorganize ng Caregiver Action Center, Filipino Support Group, at iba pang mga supporters. So, inaasahan ko na lahat ng nangangailangan ng serbisyong ito darating po sa March 29 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Salamat po.
Ito po nagtatapos ng programa ng Radyo Migrante sa CHRY 105.5 FM, your leading source for diversity. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikinig. Women's Month pa rin po till next Sunday, no? Yeah, next Sunday. So, up next po ay si Roy Green and Lady Soul of Odyssey. So, maraming salamat po at magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. May mga pahabol kayo? No? Genevieve, do you wanna greet someone?
Shoutouts to everyone for listening to us.
Okay.
Happy birthday to everyone who is celebrating their birthdays this week.
Okay. Sige, maraming
See you next week.
salamat at saka see you next week.